Hello and welcome to lecture number 3. Today we'll continue a discussion of life in ancient Greece. There are essentially two main topics for today's presentation. First, we'll look at Greek mythology and some of the gods and goddesses as well as some of the stories associated with them. Next, we'll compare and contrast what life was like in Sparta versus Athens, two leading city-states within the Greek Empire. We'll go ahead and start with religion practiced by the Greeks. Just to start us off, we'll address a concept associated with Greek religion. The Greeks were polytheists. They worshipped many different gods and goddesses. Do you know where these deities lived? Well, they resided at Mount Olympus. Yes, I traveled to Mount Olympus a few years back. Of course, this was the Olympus at the Wisconsin Dells. It was a good time at the water park with my family. Greek religion and mythology played an important role in Greek society. First of all, it promoted acceptable behavior, whether this be intelligence, patriotism, heroism. Sometimes gods and goddesses even intervened in people's daily lives. This is seen in many aspects of the Odyssey. Secondly, religion helped to answer questions about nature, the change in seasons, creation of the earth and universe. The Greeks didn't spend much time on the afterlife, however. The king of the gods was Zeus. The Romans called him Jupiter. He was the strongest and wisest of all the gods. Supposedly, if you were to have a tug of war, and Zeus was on one side of the rope, and every other god and goddess was on the other side, Zeus would simply be able to use one hand to win that tug of war. While he was supposedly the wisest, he wasn't perfect and made mistakes on more than one occasion. On the left, you see a recreation of what the temple might have looked like back in ancient times. It was one of the wonders of the ancient world. In September of 2007, I was able to travel to Greece, and on the right, you see what the temple looks like today. Here you see a close-up of one of the columns that held up the roof for this structure. Just imagine how large it must have been. The Romans had the temple destroyed because it was a symbol of paganism, and it was further destroyed by earthquakes over the years. But it was a marvel in its day. Here we see a Greek goddess. Do you know her name? It's Hera. She was the wife and sister of Zeus. She was the goddess of childbirth and marriage. The Romans called her Juno. The image on the left shows the Temple of Hera from a few years ago. This temple is the location of where the Olympic flame is lit. The image on the right shows the preparations for the 2012 Olympics, which took place in London. Another god is portrayed here. This is Poseidon, the brother of Zeus, god of the seas and earthquakes. The Romans called him Neptune. This mosaic shows another brother of Zeus. This is Hades, god of the underworld. These different gods and goddesses might sound familiar. Have you read the Percy Jackson books or seen the movies? The character of Perseus was an actual figure from Greek mythology. Sounds similar to the name Percy. Another important goddess is shown here. This is Demeter, another sister of Zeus. She was the goddess of agriculture and fertility. Here we see another goddess. This is Persephone, the daughter of Zeus and Demeter. One day, while picking flowers, the earth opened up, and she fell into the underworld and was captured by Hades. Half the year, she lives in the underworld as the wife of Hades. At other times, she lives with her mother, the goddess of agriculture. When her daughter is in the underworld, her mother does not allow crops to grow. This helps to explain the cycle of the seasons and why crops only grow at certain times of the year. Here is still another Greek deity. This is Apollo, the son of Zeus. He's the god of prophecy, poetry, music, and healing. You may or may not have heard of the temple at Delphi. This was built in honor of Apollo. People would travel throughout the Greek world in order to hear their prophecy. Priests and priestesses often offered vague answers to the questions that people asked. One husband whose wife was pregnant once asked, "Will I have a son or a daughter?" The pronouncement he received was, "Boy, no girl." That could go either way. Another Greek leader was wondering if he should attack when he was threatened by a foreign power. The response he received was, "If you attack, you will destroy a great empire." So he attacked, and a great empire was destroyed. Unfortunately for him, it was his own. This is the last of the Greek gods and goddesses I'd like to identify. This is Athena, a daughter of Zeus. She was the goddess of wisdom, and she was born from the head of Zeus. The Greek city-state of Athens built a temple to Athena. It was called the Parthenon. On the left, you see a historical drawing of the Parthenon, and on the right, you see what it looked like just a few years ago. This temple to Athena is located at the Acropolis in Athens. It is quite a structure. And as you can see, it's being rebuilt to this day. I discovered a few years ago you don't have to go all the way to Athens to see the Parthenon. There's a to-scale reproduction of the Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee, complete with a 30-foot-high statue of Athena inside the Parthenon. It's pretty cool. You might want to check it out. Now that we've explored some of the gods and goddesses of ancient Greece, I'd like to look at some of the characteristics of one Greek city-state, Sparta. Sparta was a unique city-state within Greece. It was a totalitarian nation, and by that I mean that all aspects of people's lives were controlled by the state. On the right, we see a portrayal of King Leonidas, a Spartan king. This map identifies some of the kingdoms of the ancient world. The arrow is pointing to Sparta, one of many Greek city-states. The state control of people's lives began at birth. A few days after a baby was born, government inspectors would come to determine if the baby should be allowed to live or if it should be executed. Babies who were unfit or deformed were thrown over cliffs. Beginning at the age of 7, male citizens began their military training because every aspect of society was designed to focus on the military. Between the ages of 20 to 60, men had some sort of military responsibility. The men also lived in barracks until the age of 30. This was designed to eliminate the tie between the individual and the family, particularly sons and their parents, and replace it with loyalty to the polis of Sparta. Generally speaking, marriages were arranged by parents. If for some reason some adults remained unmarried, several men might be pushed into a dark room with an equal number of girls. Those in the room would be expected to pick their life mates in the darkness. The best age for marriage for men was age 30, and for women it was 20. For the Spartans, love was expected to come after marriage as opposed to before it. Celibacy was considered a crime. Politically, Sparta was ruled by an oligarchy, or a small number of people. Political power was held by a council. This was made up of 30 male citizens, each of whom had to be over the age of 60. A person came to be a member of this council by a vote of all male citizens. Each male citizen over the age of 30 would vote. They served for life. The council members themselves chose 2 kings among the members of the council. This made sure that one could check the actions of the other because they didn't want one individual to dominate politics and all of society. In Sparta and the rest of the Greek Empire, adult male citizens were referred to as equals. Helots were slaves who cultivated the land. The Greeks, and particularly the Spartans, had a prejudice against manual labor. In Sparta, Helots outnumbered citizens by a figure of 7 to 1. Throughout most of Greek civilization, women had very little authority, and they were under the control of their kyrio. This was not the case in Sparta, where women had more power than just about any other Greek city-state. Women often spoke openly at political councils, and they could operate a business and inherit property on their own, independent of their husband. Now that we've looked at some characteristics of Sparta, I'd like to switch gears and contrast life in Sparta to life in another Greek city-state, Athens. Once again, here's that map of ancient Greece. The arrow here is pointing to the location of Athens. Whereas Sparta was a totalitarian society with a government ruled by an oligarchy, Athens had a democracy. In fact, the word democracy comes from the Greek word demokratia. Demos means people, and kratos meant power. Power to the people. Legislative power in Athens was held by the assembly. This included every adult male citizen over the age of 18. They had the power to pass all laws. While a great deal of authority was held by the assembly, the real power was in the Council of 500. This was taken from 500 members of the assembly who were chosen at random. They served a term of 1 year, and each day's leader was chosen at random. The Athenians were concerned that one person might have too much power and authority. Just about every adult male citizen would serve during his lifetime because they implemented term limits. You could only serve twice on the Council of 500. The court system in Athens was unique. If a trial was set to be held, 6,000 adult male citizens would volunteer to be part of the jury pool. Of those, 501 would be chosen at random to serve as jurors in the trial. While this all sounds very democratic in Athens, there were limits to democracy in this Greek city-state. The first limit to democracy came in the form of a system called ostracism. In order to ensure one individual did not become a dictator, each year the Athenians would vote for the man they considered to be the most dangerous. If one name appeared at least 6,000 times, he was the winner. Of course, the winner in this case was kicked out of Athens for a minimum of 10 years. Ostracism was just one example of limits to democracy. Another was the fact that the only individuals who had political power were adult male citizens. In 450 BC, this meant about 44,000 individuals out of a total population of 350,000. So we're talking about 15% of the population at most. Another limit is the fact that women had no political power. Also, slavery existed. The Athenians also had that belief that they did not want to become involved in manual labor, just as the Spartans did as well. Now that we've covered the major concepts for this presentation, I'd like to review a little bit. The first part of the review would be to go back to this chart. Remember this one with Mesopotamia and Palestine? Well, what I want to do on the next slide is to show how Greece fits in with this. This chart helps to highlight some of the key ideas included with Greece. There was a comparison and contrast between Athens with its democracy and Sparta, the totalitarian government. Religion in all of Greece helped to promote acceptable behavior and also explained natural occurring events, and it promoted the idea of patriotism. Laws were written and posted in public. When it came to religion, they were polytheists, and gods often became involved in people's daily lives. As far as specific topics go with this presentation, we looked at religion as well as 2 Greek city-states. The focus for religion was on key gods and goddesses, as well as the role or function of religion for the Greeks. When exploring Athens and Sparta, one possible essay question might ask you to compare and contrast their political systems, as well as family life. Well, that's it for today. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you found it interesting. Have a good day. We'll see you soon.